Everyone is telling you that you're really pessimistic and you have a negative output on everything, and you're like, but I don't know how to change that. The number one thing I would do to create a more optimistic thought process, and it really is about your thought process. We all have negative and pessimistic thoughts at some point or another, but it's a matter of training your thought process to change when those thoughts come up. So that way they're not always sitting there lingering, because that's what's happening, right? You're feeling like, oh my gosh, they are just lingering forever. And then everyone around me is complaining about it because I always have the most pessimistic attitude towards everything. So what we're going to do is challenge that thought. So if you just thought, I'm so stupid for giving my coworker that advice and now they're never going to want to work with me again, let's think about it. Did you actually give poor advice? Or did you learn something new and now realize maybe it wasn't the best advice? Has your coworker even voiced that they felt like it was bad advice? I actually developed maybe a new strength or skill because I realized it was bad advice and I wanted to go learn and understand why it was. When we are challenging this thought process, we do want to make sure that we're like in a positive mood or more of a neutral mood, because if we do this when we are also already feeling like negative and pessimistic, then it's not going to have a great outcome, because you're going to like spiral and you're just going to be like, yeah, it was terrible and it was awful and there's no way to fix it. We do need to do this in a more neutral headspace. But can you see by asking these type of questions how all of a sudden the thought process starts to change of like, oh, maybe I didn't give them wrong or stupid advice. Maybe I'm not stupid for the advice I gave them. Rather, maybe I just didn't know yet, and now I know what type of advice to give them. When you start to recognize this thought process over time, you're like, wait, I can change this. I can turn it around, and I can feel and become more hopeful in this situation and think maybe my coworker doesn't actually think I'm stupid because they appreciate that I was honest at the time and gave them the advice I knew best. But since I've learned that that was bad advice, now I give them new advice. Or since I learned it was bad advice because they ended up doing something incorrectly, we both learned something, and I'm able to say, oh, now I know better too. This was a simple example, but this is such a real example of when you immediately think the worst, challenge it. Challenge that thought process. And really, it helps if you write it out. But my friend, you can be more optimistic in the next week. Even within a few days, you're going to see how your thought process starts to change. And in a few months, you will transform into a more optimistic person. I can promise you that. Challenge your thoughts.